Section 1, tilde 760 words. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, least of all anonymously. But maybe that's the only way I can be honest, with you, and with myself. My name is Amina. I was 28 when I accepted a job as a live-in nanny for a Muslim family in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Layla was pregnant with her second child, and they needed someone they could trust, someone who shared their values, who could live under the same roof with dignity, boundaries, and faith. That's who I believed I was when I stepped into their home. Yusuf, Layla's husband, greeted me the day I arrived. He was polite, kind, and soft-spoken. Layla was glowing, warm, and gracious. The house felt peaceful, well-maintained, and filled with subtle reminders of our shared faith: prayer mats in corners, Qurans on shelves, a scent of oud in the air. I told myself I was lucky. This would be a fresh start. Respectful work, within a framework I understood. At first, everything moved normally. I kept to myself, focused on my responsibilities, and avoided unnecessary interactions. But Yusuf was around more often than I expected. His office was downstairs, and over time, our paths crossed more than they should have. He'd linger a moment longer in the kitchen while I made tea. He'd ask about my hometown, my family, my dreams. It felt harmless, until it didn't. One afternoon, Layla was resting upstairs, and I was preparing bottles in the kitchen. Yusuf walked in, leaned against the counter, and said I reminded him of someone from his past. I laughed awkwardly, but my chest tightened. He didn't touch me, didn't say anything explicitly wrong, but something changed in the room. A current passed between us I didn't want to acknowledge. I told myself I was imagining it. Days passed. Conversations got longer. Jokes turned more personal. He started noticing things others didn't. You braid your hair differently today, or you're always so calm with the baby. I smiled, said thank you, and walked away, but not quickly enough. I began paying more attention to how I dressed, even though I still covered modestly. I noticed when he was around. I noticed when he wasn't. At night, I found myself thinking about our talks, about how easy it was to talk to him, how he looked at me when he thought no one was watching. I hated myself for it. Layla would smile at me during dinner, trust me with her child, with her home. Her kindness was real, and her faith in me was genuine. Every time she said, "You're part of the family now," it made something inside me ache. Because I knew I had already broken something sacred, even if no one could see it yet. One evening, Yusuf and I were both in the living room. The baby had just fallen asleep. Layla was upstairs. I stood to go back to my room, but he stopped me. He said he needed someone to talk to. I shouldn't have stayed. But I did. He opened up about his marriage. He said things hadn't felt right in years. That they were more like roommates than partners. That she'd changed. That no one understood him anymore. And like a fool, I let myself believe I did. We sat in silence after that. The tension was unbearable. I got up and walked away. But it was already too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I prayed with tears in my eyes, asking for strength, asking for clarity, asking why I felt something that should never be there. I wanted to believe I was just lonely. That I missed affection, attention. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had crossed an invisible line, and now I was pretending it wasn't real. The next day, everything felt different. Yusuf avoided me. Layla was her usual self, cheerful and trusting, but I couldn't look her in the eyes for long. I started finding excuses to stay busy, to stay out of common areas. I felt like an intruder in a home that had once welcomed me. But the damage had been done, and my silence was its own form of betrayal. I wish I could say I left then. That I recognized the danger and made the right decision. But I stayed. And I told myself it was for the job, for the child, for the routine. That lie, like all the others, would eventually fall apart. This was just the beginning. the moment when temptation entered the room and never left. When boundaries blurred and faith began to erode. And even now, I wonder if it could have ended here, if I'd had the strength to walk away before it became something I couldn't undo. He kissed me the night Layla went into early labor and Yusuf stayed home, pacing, anxious. It was late, nearly midnight. The baby was asleep. She was still at the hospital under observation, and he was worried. I brought him tea without thinking, and when I handed it to him, his fingers brushed mine and stayed there. He looked at me like he had something to say, something he'd been holding for too long. Then, without warning, he leaned in and kissed me. I didn't pull away. That was the part that broke me later. I didn't stop it. I convinced myself it was the stress, the late hour, the confusion. But I knew that was a lie. That kiss wasn't an accident. It was where we'd both been headed for weeks. And instead of running from it, I stepped deeper in. What followed wasn't romantic. It wasn't even passionate. It was secretive, silent, full of guilt and fear, but I kept returning to it. Maybe because it made me feel seen. Maybe because it made me feel wanted. Or maybe because I didn't know how to stop once it had started. Yusuf never said he loved me. He never promised anything. But he kept coming to me, quietly, carefully, always when Layla was sleeping or distracted. We became skilled at hiding it. Small gestures, silent conversations, fleeting touches when no one was looking. I lived in constant paranoia. Every knock on the door, every unexpected footstep sent a jolt through me. But it wasn't enough to make me stop. I thought I could manage it. Control it. Keep it in a box. I didn't realize how fast it was consuming me. I started avoiding Layla. I didn't want to be in the same room with her any longer than necessary. Her smile felt like a knife. Her gratitude, her trust, they were unbearable. She'd ask me if I was okay. She thought I was tired or homesick. I nodded, smiled, said I was fine. Meanwhile, I was drowning in a lie that grew heavier every day. I couldn't sleep, couldn't pray without crying. My guilt didn't disappear, it just got quieter, buried under denial. Every time Yusuf touched me, I felt more hollow. What once felt like attention now felt like control. He started asking where I went on my days off, why I didn't respond to his texts quickly. It stopped feeling like a secret and started feeling like a trap. I wasn't in a relationship, I was in a situation I couldn't explain, couldn't end, and couldn't justify. One night I overheard Layla telling her sister she was so thankful for me. She said, "I don't know how I'd manage without Amina. She's like a sister to me." I went to the bathroom and vomited. That sentence stayed with me longer than Yusuf's touches ever did. It was the moment I realized what I had done could never be undone. She saw me as family. I had become the threat from within. I tried to pull away. I told Yusuf we needed to stop. He nodded, said he understood, then found ways to be alone with me again anyway. And I let it happen, again. I started to hate myself. I thought about quitting, but the idea of facing Layla, explaining why I was leaving, made my chest tighten with panic. I convinced myself that staying was somehow safer. That if I stayed, I could fix it. That if I stayed, at least no one would know. I began crying during prayers. I skipped meals. I ignored texts from friends. I avoided mirrors. The girl who walked into that house, confident, faithful, composed, she was gone. In her place was someone who lied with every breath she took inside that home. A message from an old friend shook me. She sent me a hadith without context. A believer is not a betrayer. That was it. Nothing more. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It felt like someone had seen right through me. I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I wasn't just hurting myself, I was tearing apart a family. A woman who trusted me. Children who looked up to me. And worst of all, I was doing it with full awareness. I knew Yusuf wasn't going to stop. I knew he was too used to getting what he wanted, too skilled at staying in control. He wasn't cruel, but he was selfish. And I had let myself believe his pain justified my choices. That was the deepest lie of all. His marriage wasn't mine to fix. His loneliness wasn't mine to fill. And what we had wasn't love. It was a slow moral collapse, dressed in soft moments and false comfort. The affair hadn't just changed me, it had broken something inside me. And the worst part? I still hadn't told her. I was still waking up each morning in that same house, playing the same role, waiting for the truth to catch up with me. The morning I left, the house was silent. I had packed the night before, quietly, methodically. I left a letter on Layla's nightstand, not because I wanted forgiveness, but because she deserved the truth. I didn't wake anyone. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out with a small suitcase and a heart that felt too heavy to carry. I and the letter, I told her everything. Not out of guilt, but obligation. She had trusted me with her home, her children, her life. I told her what had happened between me and Yusuf. I didn't soften the words. I didn't ask her to understand. I just told the truth, for the first time in months. It was the only thing I had left to give her that had any honesty in it. Yusuf texted later that day. First asking where I went, then accusing me of ruining everything. I didn't reply. I blocked him. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices. I had made mine. And now the consequences belonged to both of us. Layla never responded. No calls, no texts, not even a message of anger. Just silence. I imagined her reading that letter, holding her belly, trying to make sense of how someone she welcomed into her family could do something so unforgivable. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to be forgiven. And maybe I didn't deserve to be. I moved back to my aunt's house in a nearby city. I took small jobs, cleaning, babysitting, anything that kept me busy and distant from people. I didn't tell anyone the truth. I just said it was time for a change. But the truth was always with me. It followed me in every room I entered, every prayer I whispered. The damage wasn't just in that house. It was in me. I started therapy a month later. The counselor was quiet, thoughtful, and didn't rush me. I told her everything over weeks, not expecting sympathy, just needing to say the words out loud. I needed someone to know the version of me I'd become. She listened. She didn't excuse it. But she didn't condemn me either. That balance saved me. I realized the betrayal hadn't started with the kiss. It had started long before, when I let emotional closeness take the place of boundaries, when I ignored the tension, when I convinced myself that being seen was the same as being valued. I thought Yusuf understood me. I thought his attention meant something. But it didn't. He wanted escape. I wanted meaning. And in that confusion, we both destroyed something we weren't entitled to touch. It took time to rebuild a version of myself I could stand to live with. I started praying again, not for forgiveness at first, but for clarity. I didn't want to be the victim of my own decisions. I wanted to own them. I stopped blaming him. I stopped making excuses. I started writing, journal entries, reflections, pieces I never planned to share. I needed to make sense of how far I had fallen. There were days when the shame felt unbearable. When I would think about Layla and the life I disrupted. I'd see pregnant women in public and flinch. I'd hear children laugh and feel a pang in my chest. There's no way to erase what I did. But I learned something important. Regret doesn't heal you. Responsibility does. I never told anyone else. Not my mother, not my friends. This confession, this healing, it had to be private. I had already betrayed one woman by pretending to be someone I wasn't. I refused to make my redemption a public performance. I owed that to Layla. And to myself. I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she kept the letter, if she showed it to Yusuf, if she left him. I wonder if she found peace or if I became the ghost that haunted her faith in people. I'll never know. That's part of the punishment. Some things break and stay broken. Not every story ends with closure. Some just end, but I'm still here. Still waking up. Still rebuilding. I don't define myself only by what I did, but I don't hide from it either. It's a part of me now, a scar, not a wound. I carry it, not proudly, but purposefully. If someone asked me what I learned, I'd tell them this: infidelity doesn't always look like lust. Sometimes it looks like loneliness. Like blurred lines. Like silence when you should speak. And once it starts, it's never just one moment. It's 1,000 tiny decisions that shape the person you become. I became someone I never thought I'd be. But I'm not her anymore. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure of that.